Okay, part 2 of our segments video is going to just highlight midpoints and another topic dealing with midpoints bisector. So the first thing we want to do is define what a midpoint is. The midpoint of a segment is a point that divides our segment into two congruent segments. So if I know, looking at this diagram over here, that AC, segment AC, has a midpoint of B, it divides it into two congruent segments. And we can mark those with those little tick marks. And I furthermore know then that AB is congruent to BC. Okay? A line, array, or a segment that intersects another segment at its midpoint. Okay? So that is this right here. This happens to be a line. Okay? It's going through the midpoint. It's going through the midpoint. So that is called, well, first off, it's said to bisect that segment if it goes through the midpoint. And then it is called a segment bisector. So in this diagram, B is the midpoint of segment AC, and line L, I kind of wrote over it there a little bit, but line L is a segment bisector of that segment. Okay, that's really all there is about midpoints, so we're going to do some examples. So I'm told that Q is the midpoint of PR. So since I know it's a midpoint, I know these two segments must be congruent or their lengths equal. Their lengths are equal. So I can say 7x minus 16 equals 4x plus 2. Subtract 4x. Add 16. It's an equal sign up there. Divide by 3. And I am only looking for the value of x for this first problem. Okay, so let's look at the next one. This time, though, I'm to find a length. This time I'm trying to find a length. So again, H is the midpoint, so I know these two are congruent. When I'm told it's a midpoint, they're congruent. So I know that GH equals HI. So 5x plus 2 equals 9x minus 10. Subtract 9x. Subtract 2. Remember, numbers on one side, variables on the other. Divide by negative 4. So I get x equals 3. But remember, it wants to know GH. So GH We substitute our x in, so it's 5 times what our x is, 3, plus 2 equals 17. Okay, let's look at the next one. QR, or R is the midpoint of QS, so I know that QR equals RS. The first step is to find x, so we set them equal 2x plus 16 equals 5x minus 17. Subtract 16. Divide by negative 3. But this time, what's it want me to find? This time it wants me to find QS. Okay, so how do I find that? Well, first thing I would do is substitute into one of the two expressions. So let's find QR. 2 times 11 plus 16 equals 22 plus 16, which is 38. And I know QS equals QR. Or I'm sorry, RS, my bad. I apologize for that. Let me write this again. Sorry. I know RS equals the same thing, right? Because we wrote that down at the very beginning. R is a midpoint, so QR must equal RS. And to find QS, I just add those two together. Segment addition. QR plus RS equals QS. And the last one is a little bit challenging. Let's first see what it's saying. It's saying that G is a midpoint, so those two are congruent. And it's giving a different expression for the whole length. So the first thing we're going to do is let's find our x. We know those two are congruent. So let's find our x. Subtract 3. Divide by negative 3. Okay, let's find FG. Four times 5 plus 3 equals 23. And I know GH equals 23. So to do FH and find Y, we know FG plus GH equals FH. So I know 23 plus 23 equals 6y minus 2. just going to leave my y on that side since I can just isolate it by adding 2 to both sides. And then divide by 6. So this one was just a little bit different, and hopefully you were able to understand that. And this ends our notes on segments.